What's up, everyone? Week 1 is in the books, which means Power Spike is back to break it all down. dGon alongside Dom and Jamada. And, comments went super hard in the Jamada arc here. First one by LimeWire saying, "So nice of Nipsey Hussle to come back from the grave and host an esports podcast."
Damn, that's disrespectful right there. That's where I draw the line.
Yeah, that's disrespectful to Nipsey, man. Like,
bro, Nipsey's dead. He's been dead. I don't even know what he looks like at this point. He's been dead for like 4 or 5 years, bro.
He's apparently, according to LimeWire, is right here with us. We should be so honored.
This thing, you look like a corpse, bro. That's fucked up.
The second one that kind of, I mean, they kind of went in here. The second one that came on in was saying, "Oh, you can see Monty's work go into use now because we got new thumbnails." That's right, new thumbnail for Dom. Looks pretty good. People weighing in. Both you looked good. Also, you look bad. And then also editors saying that we should rename him to Jamada Cannon. That's why I said Jamada earlier. So joining the broadcast here. And then we had one more that got me too good. Let's see. Where was it? I can't find it. All right. Sorry, smart guy that had it. It was a good one. That was the one where I was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to run it. But yeah, either way, week 1 into the books. And we thank you all for watching that first week and welcoming Jamada to the broadcast. How was your week here, Jamada?
Good. I enjoyed it. You guys made it very comfortable.
We'll try to change that this episode.
Oh, yeah. And I was about to say, throughout this week, I've been dreading this episode because I didn't get grazed last week. So this has to be the week where it happens. Otherwise, you're just going to keep me on a string the entire time until something breaks.
Hey, Jamada, how have you been doing in solo queue? You get out of Diamond yet? This split?
Brother, I haven't touched solo. I didn't even finish in Diamond at the end of this season. Like, I just fully tapped out. I do not want to play solo queue with all of these. Like, EOS is just full of crackheads now, man. I'm not there for it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm past it. My younger self, I've proven my solo queue deeds. It doesn't need to be done again anymore.
Yeah. Dom, you still like get Diamond every year, at least, right? Challenger, Masters.
I mean, at least GM. At least GM. Like, I'll do at least a climb to like low GM every year, and then because for me, it's like, I actually have to try to get Challenger. Like, I can't just get Challenger easily anymore with like no effort. Like, I have to like put in the time, like low champion pool. Like, I have to put in effort to get Challenger. So like GM, I could probably hit an NA without like doing too much. I can just play like whatever champ I'm playing and I'll just get there. But like Challenger, I got to put in the work, and it's just a lot, man. Like, you just have to play a lot, I think, to get Challenger nowadays, unless you're like in insane form already. So yeah, it's a grind, but I'm probably gonna do one this year again. I don't know. It's like the fun thing for me now that I enjoy is I like being like the oldest Challenger player in a way. Like, I think that's like kind of cool. It's like, damn, bro, like who else is out here like turning 35, fucking hitting Challenger, bro? Who else is out here doing it? So that's kind of where like I'm trying to find the enjoyment of it. That's like the cool thing to me because I've obviously played the game for so long.
That's right. Shit on him because you're both better and older. You just keep you're getting into uncle range. Yeah. Speaking of success, how's the Ruddy set going? How's the NLC going for you, brother?
I mean, the stream went well. The co-stream went well. The new like green screen room I got, like everything, it's going well overall. I think people enjoyed it. Definitely a lot to iron out. I mean, when you do like a production like this from your house, there was so many issues. Like, literally, I didn't even know if we were going to be able to stream the first day of it because I had to go out to Best Buy and like find a microphone because like the microphone didn't work. The one that we had, it's a Shure microphone. It's worked for every other stream that I've done in every other part of my house. For some reason, in this room, there's like too much echo. It didn't work. So I had to like go, 30 minutes before the stream started. I'm in a Best Buy like, yo, do you have any like of these Rode mics? I went to Target first. They didn't have one. I went to Best Buy. I finally got one. I'm like driving home, like trying to not like break any laws, but also get to the stream on time. And we finally got it up and running, and we at least like accomplished that we did the stream on the first week. So I was happy about that. In terms of like our results, we went 1-1. The game we lost, we had Yamato in. So like Yamato had to sub because leader got a 1-game ban. So we lost that game, which I was hoping that we won it anyway, but I think we'll be fine for the most part. Like the league is I think better than I thought. Like I think that with all of the new people coming in, Los Ratones, Nord, us, like the overall level of the league is not bad. So yeah, I'm excited, bro. I'm excited, and I hope that we can keep on improving. Yesterday the scrims went really poorly, but the viewership was good. So we got to just make it good content, and I think everything will fall into place.
When do you guys play Los Ratones?
It's dependent on the format.
Yeah, we don't know if we will play them. We might not play them at all.
Oh, because this is it's just, I know this first round portion is seeding, but is it like if you lose like twice or three times, it's like Swiss, like you're out?
No one's out. It's just like we don't know if we'll play them in a best of 5. It depends on the bracket and everything.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. And if you haven't watched those streams yet, they are entertaining until Hums talks a little bit too much, and then I can't. I can't.
Oh, that's like the best part. The only part I don't like is when, and I think we're changing things going forward. I'll just say this now. We've decided we're gonna scrim a different way. We're gonna do max 3 games at a time. We're gonna try to do more days, but only 3 games, because this happens a lot in like pro teams too. If you get shit on 3 games out of 5, those 4th and 5th games are completely silent. They're dog shit content, and they're unproductive, and everyone's fucking tilted, and it's just not worth it, you know? So like, we're a content team. We want people to be enjoying their time. So scrimming more days for less hours. Also, like a 3-game block. The main thing that kills scrims are in between the games. Like the reviews are what kill the scrim set, because it's like 25 minutes, you know, even these teams you agree on, hey, we're going to do short reviews, 5-minute reviews, whatever, never ends up happening. It's 25 minutes in between games. So if you only have 2 of those 25-minute stretches in between games, you do 3 games, you can get the full set done in like 2.5 hours, and it feels light in your day, you know, like you're like excited to like go do your next thing. It doesn't feel like, fuck bro, I have scrims today, I got to do 5 hours of fucking scrims, and then you're just like tilted and you don't even want to be there. So we're trying a different angle. We got to tweak everything, but I mean, it's all a learning process, right? We're doing this all together. You can't predict how everything's going to go. You can't predict what the team's level is going to be. You can't predict like how the players are going to, you know, play together. You can't predict the enjoyment. You can't predict the viewership. Like all this stuff is you can't predict the fucking production problem. So all this stuff you have to be willing to like tweak as you go, or it's not worth doing something like this. It's like any other project that you start.
Yeah. Well, again, it's great to see you kind of evolve into this new section of content, I guess, that you're doing, like the green screen, the speeches, all that stuff. If you haven't seen it, go watch the Ruddy Sack take on the NLC throughout the week. It was a lot of fun. All right. Well, first things first, it's time to cash in on our predictions of the patch. And we wanted to get reactions on the patch after week 1 based on both what we thought was going to be strong and if it was or wasn't. And also, is this good for pro play? Because there's been a lot of talk and conversation about Otacon and only spawning one Otacon, only Voracious Otacon. We had like a little counter on LCK how many Ruinous Otacons there would be. And
it was 0.
It stayed at 0. Yeah.
Yes,
never.
Obviously.
We got one in Challengers yesterday, I think. That was the first one.
I'll say one thing. If Hilly can't spawn Ruinous Otacon by himself, the game is fucking broken. Like that is the deciding factor. Hilly better be able to solo spawn Ruinous Otacon. This motherfucker died like 12 times in one game, and it's fucking the other Otacon. It's Voracious Otacon.
It was 9 before 20 minutes, if I recall correctly.
9 before 20 minutes. Like this guy, he was literally running it down and 1v1ing the enemy AD carry. It was like a prime Hillsong entertainment game. It was one of the best things I've ever watched. And he couldn't spawn. Like he was going and fighting people 1v1 to try to get the damage counter up so that Ruinous Otacon ended up spawning, and he couldn't do it. So like the game is fucking broken. We got to lower this this threshold. I feel like in a pro game, if there's like 12, 13 kills before 14 minutes, that should be a Ruinous Otacon game. That's at least how I feel.
What do you make of it, Jamada, so far?
Yeah, I mean, my big worry is that they're changing it to go the other way, because Voracious isn't showing up in solo queue that much. So I don't know. I think the issue kind of just ends up getting worse, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I still think that Atacon as a buff is kind of silly, but I like that it's present because teams are just like teams do have no idea how to set up around it or really how to play around them with it right now. A lot of teams are still learning, so it's creating some really hilarious game states at times that don't even really need to happen.
Yeah. So I would just float this out because for my eyes over in LCK, it felt like teams got way dumber. That's probably the only way to describe it. Like the macro of the game is way dumber for a lot of our teams that have been so good at playing around the map, except maybe D plus Kia and maybe Gen G in their wins, but in their first series, but in the second series, B&K Ferox could have just easily beaten them. Do you think that's a good thing? Because I feel like that's the reason why the game's getting sloppier. There's way less downtime now to set up your next play. As soon as you get caught in one of the plays, either the first grubs, the first tower, the first dive, all the way back there, you're just constantly behind, and then you're just trying to like patch holes in a sinking ship.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a few things here. Like, number one, when you have these types of when you have Otacon in the game, it's a while before teams become precise around the Otacon. It takes a while for them to understand exactly how much damage it does. When can we tank it? Like, how many people do we need actually hitting the objective? How many people do we need zoning? The spot that it spawns is a place that no other neutral objective has ever spawned. So like fighting around that tri-bush control and like the weird like walls that you have all over everything, it complicates how you're going to fight, because people can come around the big walls from lane. They can come like directly over the wall. They can come through tri-bush. There's a lot of angles into that one situation. So I would say that is like something that I expect people to be bad at originally and then get better at over time. So that's number one. I think the second thing that I would say about this is, sure, like teams are going to be more flippy, but I'm a little bit worried about it hurting the game strategically, because if you think about how the game is played right now, there's already strategies that used to exist that like almost no longer exist. Like side laning is no longer side laning to split push. Split pushing doesn't exist. You're not pushing when you have a winning side lane. You're pushing the side lane and then moving. You're not actually trying to like take the turret and stuff like that. And with Otacon in the game, it's like you don't have much time to side lane, because it's like Dragon is spawning, Herald is spawning, 2 grubs are spawning, another Dragon is spawning, Otacon is spawning, now Baron is spawning, another Dragon is spawning. Like there's so much spawning in the game that you just kind of like go to the side lane and you just like full retard push the side lane and then just go back. And it's like, what happened to the nuance? What happened to the, oh, we're going to like slow push the side lane and then we're going to rotate on the, like, I like shit like that being in the game. I like that being at least possible to be done within the game, because if that's not possible to be done within the game, then like it becomes just like a fist fight where it's like very low IQ and it's kind of brain dead to watch. So that's my couple issues with Otacon, is having another thing on top of now having like the 2 grubs be very isolated fights, because before it was like second grubs you might not take second grubs, because if you take first grubs around 9-10 minutes, it's going to spawn right before the Herald. You might not be able to get those second grubs in time. So you end up in a situation where it's like the Herald being spawned later means that now there's like 3 objectives. There's the 2 grub fights that are going to be very distinct situations. Then there's going to be a Herald situation. And then there's going to be dragons the whole time. And then there's going to be Otacon. And it's like, there's just too much spawning to be able to progress the game like intelligently with like nuance through like side lane and stuff like that.
Jamada, go ahead.
That's at least what I think.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that I see here is that I don't think it's going to change either. And if anything, it might end up getting worse, because I feel like anytime, I mean, hell, I think when was it, season 6, 7? There was a period of time where the game was really, really boring to watch in pro play, and it was around like the tank meta. I think Dom, you were still playing in this meta.
I was not playing, but I was playing like a lot of solo queue. I was definitely like existing in this meta. Yeah, I remember it.
And like, as far as pro play is concerned, it used to basically just be only dragons, Herald, and then Baron, right? And that created really stale watching experiences for pro play. And I recall Riot very actively making changes to basically just make teams head by each other 24/7. And I feel like we've just continually gone down this rabbit hole with pretty much every single systematic change that they've made around objectives, where it's just like, we want teams to interact with each other more frequently, right? At the high end level. So I think, unfortunately, we're just going to stay in this loop where, like, as far as pro play is concerned, teams are just going to butt heads 24/7 over these objectives, because it's kind of by design, and they're making them too powerful to not really contest as well, which, again, I think is kind of what they're going for. They don't want downtime. They want pro play to be as exciting as it possibly can be to watch. And unfortunately, that forgoes a lot of nuance and strategy when you get to a point where it's objectives are every 2 minutes, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that was my next question. Do you think this can get solved the way that like Herald for Drake was solved. You didn't fight for both. You would trade one on the other side of the map for the other. Like we've gone through these metas where they get solved, but now it just feels like there's so many objectives in the game that the teams, we're in the early stages of them figuring it out, but it doesn't feel like they're close to figuring it out yet. It just feels like we're going to run at the thing, and whoever has better hands and maybe a better draft will win.
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely at a stage before this season where I think teams had it pretty down. It was very formulaic.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things that I'll say that like are a little bit weird. I really don't like the contradictory changes, or like this is what I think ends up happening. So for example, the split pushing issue was an issue in the game for a while. And one thing that they did is they made 700 gold side lane tier 2 turrets, and they made the mid lane tier 2 turret give increased gold, etc. Because they're like, we want you to be able to play for the turrets and that to be rewarding in its own like extent. But then they end up doing this where it's like, how do you even play for the turrets when like you have like this in the game? Like it just seems like they're pulling in different directions frequently, and it ends up feeling kind of bad at a point, because I don't really know what their vision for the game is. I agree that fighting is more entertaining to watch, but I think that like it's one of those things where if like fighting is more entertaining to watch, but if there is like slightly less fighting and the fights are more unique and it doesn't just feel like everyone's fighting all the time, maybe those moments become more hype and those become more watchable in a sense. So that's kind of like where I'm at when it comes to, thinking about this type of stuff, is that like there's parts of the game that people really like that make players look really cool that might not be shown as much. Like when you see Bin 1v2ing in the side lane on Fiora or some shit, right? Like, and he's like, there's two people on him and he parries a fucking ability, gets the stun, he's 100 HP, he like quickly like procs all the vitals, gets a reset, and then he's like winning. That type of stuff was cool. I remember like season 7 watching Khan do this a lot. And I thought that was like, damn, bro, this guy's like such a fucking beast. Like he was like 1v2ing Faker and shit. I'm like, holy fuck, like this guy is like the real deal. Like he's gonna win a fucking title doing this shit. And it was really exciting. And I just think that like too much of one thing will always make the game boring, even if that thing is on the surface exciting, I guess would be the general take.
Final thoughts, Jamada?
Yeah, I think saturation begets boredom.
Okay, Einstein, Jesus Christ, bro. This is power spike. What the fuck? Like,
all right. Sorry.
Jesus Christ. We got Socrates.
You're supposed to make some of the viewership feel like,
yeah, bro.
I don't want to feel like I didn't get it.
Like, right. Holy
what
fuck.
are we forgetting?
My fault. Saturation. All right, sorry. Saturation ends up bringing more boredom over time because you just end up seeing the same thing on repeat, right? There you go. That's what it means.
Fucking
you see
nerd.
too much of the same
Jesus
thing.
Christ.
You see too much of the same thing. You're gonna just end up, getting used to it. And there's, like Dom's saying, you don't really get to. I feel like you lose tension, especially at pro play level. Like there's no time to like, this is coming up in like 3 minutes. It's like, no, this is coming up in 90 seconds. This is coming up in 90 seconds. This is coming up in. There's just like there's no end to it really.
Yeah. Other than Fearless, because we'll get to that in a segment later. Were there any other changes in this patch that I think have jumped out at you, whether it was champion balance or I don't know. I mean, it was basically champion balance is all kind of jumps out of my head. Like players getting baited with the tier 3 boots, feats of strength, anything that jumps out at you being more tuned or less tuned than what you thought here, Jamada?
No, not really. I mean, I still hold on to the same opinion about tier 3 boots from last week and seeing more pro players occasionally fall into the trap. It's really rare that you should ever be building tier 3 boots until basically a full build. It's like, is there an objective up and maybe buying these tier 3 boots will make a big difference? It's going to slow down my next item. That's basically the only decision making I think you ever have to make around tier 3 boots. And even then, I don't think it's like unfortunately right now as they are, I don't think they're powerful enough to really ever warrant that trade-off. Again, unless you are basing on that exact amount of gold. And those are the circumstances.
Yep. All right. Yep. Well, with that,
Eats this week, I would say the other thing I would say about this is Otacon is like the voracious Otacon is just way too strong. Obviously, they're gonna do it like they're gonna make it 200 gold instead of 100 gold. This has already like been said that they're gonna do that on 15 too. I think it's still gonna be too fucking strong because the problem is that when you have Otacon, right? Like when you have this Otacon objective, this voracious Otacon. it is impossible to use it poorly. Whereas, like, you remember when we see bad teams, and obviously there was one time where Rogue actually completely fucking inted with it. That was the only time. It's only possible in Europe, right? If you're not European, if you're not European,
Rogue, to be honest,
yeah. If you're not European, it's impossible to use it. If you're okay, I'm not gonna even say that because I don't know what's about to go on in LTA North and South. If you're not Asian, it is impossible to use this incorrectly. Okay, if you're not playing an LPL or LCK, it is impossible to, or sorry, if you are playing an LPL and LCK, it is impossible to use it incorrectly. So the problem is that you end up in a situation where if somebody gets Baron, you can see an incorrect usage, right? Like there's times where teams get Baron and they go like 2 lanes and they're not able to push, or somebody gets caught and their whole Baron is wasted. It's like, oh, they didn't actually get much from that. They, you know, it's okay. The game goes on. But you see Otacon usage and everyone just like runs down a lane. They can make the most disgusting, horrible play. They could be playing on 3 lanes. They could be playing on 2 lanes. They could be full monkey diving. They could like just, you know, play on 1 lane and just run it down and suicide. They could not sync it. People could just get caught. There's nothing that happens in the game that makes it a bad usage. And I just don't understand how that can be the case, because the way that the game should work is that even if it's a one-time use objective, it is easier to kill than Baron. It is like just an easier objective to kill from a damage standpoint than Baron, because it has similar health, a little bit more health, but way less armor. So it's easier to kill than a Baron. And like a Baron doesn't auto win you the game, but it feels like an Otacon can auto win you a game, which just doesn't make sense in my mind. It doesn't make sense to me that this objective that spawns one time at 20 minutes is so insanely game defining compared to the later objectives. I feel like the way the game should work is that, like, yeah, I mean, if you get 4 Drakes, like Soul should be a more powerful objective than Baron, right? Because it is something that takes a while to get there. You have to do a lot of things in order to obtain the Soul. A Elder, which is like the latest spawning objective in the game, should be the most powerful because it's like, you know, the thing that spawns the latest. I feel like as the game goes on, things should become more and more powerful. But Otacon spawns in 20 minutes. You don't need to like do much to set it up. Like it's just something that either team can get. And if you get it, you like almost always win the fucking game in pro play. So that's my issue, is I just feel like it's way too powerful compared to like when it spawns and all that goes into it. Like it's essentially an objective that can end up being flipped, or you could get it off a 1-1 team fight and it completely alters the way the game is played.
Yeah, we haven't pulled the numbers yet, but I think on the LCK pre-show we're gonna pull up our like feats of strength win rate, the Otacon take win rate, and go from there just to kind of see. But yeah, right in that early post have said like, hey, the win rates are in line with the same with like First Blood, First Turret. So excited to see what else they put out there in terms of solo queue, and then within pro play, it's just a matter of time before someone makes the calculation, and then we can go from there. I think Forrest also would make a calculation after the first like 2 or 3 days of pro play, but yeah, we'll see. All right, well, those are our ideas on the patch so far. What do y'all think at home? How's it been for a viewership standpoint? Let us know in the comments below. We'll give you a shout out. Now it's time for us to shout out a brand new sponsor to the Last Free Nation Network. It's our friends over at Quip and Quip Toothbrush. Monty, take it away.
Hey everybody, Monte Cristo here. We've got an exciting new sponsor on Power Spike today, and that is, of course, going to be Quip and their new electric toothbrush, the Quip 360. For those of you guys who are using manual toothbrushes, what you should probably know is that the Quip 360 can remove up to 11 times more plaque between your teeth compared to a manual toothbrush, and provide up to 2 times more whitening on day 1. Now, if you're an electric toothbrush user, the Quip 360 is great. First off, because it's smaller than most other electric toothbrushes. It's the smallest one I've ever used, and it's going to be a lot quieter as well. So it's going to be more portable for you if you guys do traveling, easier to take around, and make sure your teeth are clean wherever you go. I've been loving using this, particularly while I was traveling in the United States over the holidays. So Quip has been wonderful. And you can, of course, get their subscription as well, which will send you periodically new heads. And then you don't have to think about getting new toothbrushes, new heads for your toothbrush ever again. Quip's a great product, guys. And just for you, the listeners of Power Spike, you can get up to 20% off site-wide and a free travel case and countertop stand at getquip.com. QUIP.com/spike. Free your mouth today and save 20% site-wide, plus a free travel case and countertop stand at getquip.com. That's QUIP.com/spike. Get Quip, QUIP.com/spike. Thank you very much to Quip for supporting Power Spike. And as we always say, supporting our sponsors is the best way to support us here at LFN.
Thanks to our friends over at Quip. Again, use the code SPIKE to get yourself the toothbrush, and also to support your homies here at LFN. All right, let's get to it. Our next segment here. It's time for a little fraud alert. You know, it's only been 1 week, but we already got people sounding the alarms for these 3 high-profile championship-worthy teams, championship-winning teams across the world. Who's an actual fraud here? Who's the biggest fraud? How about that?
T1.
Between
T1 is the biggest fraud.
No, T1 is not. T1 is not one of the options. Dom. T1.
They are one of the options. I'm putting them as one of the options. T1 is one of the options.
Okay. Fraud alert with Invictus Gaming, G2, Hanwha Life Esports, and T1. Let's get to it. Let's start with, I guess, one of the Korean ones, since now all of a sudden we have 2. T1 dropping their first match to D plus Kia for Group Baron, and not a lot of teams in Group Baron did really well in the LCK Cup. Neither did Hanwha Life Esports, but T1, they looked out of sorts. It was a win. They did win a game, but it was a 2-1, but it was a loss. Not what you're expecting out of this team. What did you expect from this team? What did they give? And how would you rate them on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of fraudulency? Dom, go ahead. I know you're chomping at the bit.
I mean, I don't know. Like, this team, they just look so much weaker without the like powerhouse top laner. Like, where is the firepower on this team? And I feel like a lot of the same issues existed the entire time within T1 domestically, and then when it comes to, you know, international play, somehow they just don't exist anymore. Oh shit, I almost knocked over a light. But yeah, when I'm watching them play, it just feels like they're really lacking firepower. I think that people underestimated how much Zeus was doing for the team. I think people saw him as like, oh, he's going side lane, he's just inting randomly, but he was somebody who generated so much pressure. And I think the fact that he was able to win his lane a lot of times while being pressured, and it was still okay. Like, he would die on good timers, unironic good deaths, and always be powerful in the game, was a really underrated skill for the team. So yeah, when I'm watching them play, they look like they're really off. And the way they got beat by D+, it makes me feel like it's almost impossible for them to beat Gen.G whenever they play each other in LCK Cup.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch. They just did not look the same. The firepower wasn't there, but also Guma played very poorly. He has played very poorly. Jamada, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I feel like if you can't enable anyone on this team, I think what Dom brings up is a really good point, because the way that Zeus played kind of subsequently enables T1 to kind of play however they feel like in any given game, as long as they're not griefing their lane states. And I think you kind of not part saw that, but in their DRX series, even though they're more so expected to win the DRX series, it felt like they had drafted more positive lanes, and then the second they can play off lane states, they're fine, but it was mostly through Ona, right? I think Ona throughout most of that DRX series played phenomenally. He was on forcing the issue, and I think if they have a clear direct route of play, this version of T1 domestically seems fine, but the second they lose any kind of like ease of access to basically having somewhere on the map to play, they look really, really clueless right now. So yeah, from my expectation, coming from like a very big outsider's perspective to the LCK, this just seems like the domestic T1 that I was promised compared to international. So I can't say I'm super surprised, but it is still kind of shocking to see them make some of the decisions that they make on the Rift in their current form.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised, because normally watching like domestic T1, at least in the last split, it was like like normally it kind of was like they would live and die by Faker. Like when Faker would have good games and he wouldn't get solo killed in lane, like the team would be fine. They would normally win. But then he was having like a really bad split. He was losing a lot of lanes. He wasn't effective on the AD mids. Like there was all these problems, and it was like, okay, this makes sense. But the other players were still solid. But like you said, the Guma problem, I mean, he was really inting, bro. He's really running it down, getting caught on mid waves. I mean, all the problems that he's had forever, I think, have still showed themselves here. And the thing about Guma is like, sometimes they're problems and sometimes they're not. So I don't really know if it's a thing where I feel like he's like getting worse at it or better at it. It just feels like that's just part of who Guma is as a player. It's like sometimes he is just up on mid waves that he's not safe on and he just dies and that snowballs the game. And sometimes he's just able to accurately predict where people are. And normally it gets better in the bigger moments. So we'll see if that's actually the case. But I do think that the overlying thing that I think will happen here is like Faker at his core is a playmaker, right? That's who Faker is. Owner, that's one of Owner's best qualities, is that he is also like a playmaking player. So they have a playmaking mid jungle, and they used to have like really good AD, really good top laner, and then like a playmaking mid jungle, and they would be able to play to either side and enable both of them. And if Guma or Zeus would get strong, they would carry the game. I feel like they just don't have enough firepower to beat the top teams in the LCK. I mean, we'll see with Hanwha Life. Obviously, Hanwha Life's form didn't look good. I just feel like that roster will probably end up being solid because normally they have pretty good setups. I mean, they kept majority of the lineup. They still have the Peanut Delight core, which I think is really nice when it comes to being able to set up vision and control the map. And I just can't see how T1 is going to beat the two top teams in LCK without having more firepower, without having somebody else to play to. Because if the whole thing is like Faker is good as fuck, like Faker has to go into God mode. That's pretty much what I see. He has to go into God mode in order for this team to win, because he somehow has to simultaneously be a playmaker, but he also has to be giga strong in the games, which is something that like pretty much only Chovy has been able to achieve.
Yeah. Just to show the champ pool a little bit here for people at home, Faker has played Aurora most recently, which I think is it's nice for him to show that he can carry and has carried on that. He also played Victor, which we've seen in LEC a lot, or I guess we got to see in LEC that can be very impactful. And then we've seen the classics, Galio, Azir, and then his Yone. His Yone is not great. Domestically, it's not great, but he's forced to play it. Doran has played the opposite role as well. He's shown that he can play the Gragas. K'Sante, if the team needs him to play that. Jax, and then he played Jace, the tank Jace, which hasn't looked good in LCK the way that it looks good everywhere else in LPL, in Europe. It has not looked good in LCK. And then he played Rumble. So they're trying. It's only been 2 games. It was very different opposition. And after this whole LCK draft, you could tell the Elder group is much stronger with those top 3 teams in KTT plus and Gen G than the Baron group, which has Hanwha Life, T1, and a surprising DN Automotive Freaks as their probably 3rd best team there. I have to say DN Automotive, otherwise we just get DN'd all the time.
Okay.
All right. So next up, what do we rate them in terms of fraudulency scale? 1 to 10. So Dom, you go first, and we can show Jamada how this is done.
10 out of 10 fraudulency. As fraudulent as possible. They're just terrible. They're supposed to be the best team in the world. This is not the world championship T1 I was promised. You guys threw away Zeus and able to get Doran. You guys said, Zeus is trash, Doran is better, we're the best team. That's what we get. That's how the story goes, I guess. And they are not able to perform. So yeah, 10 out of 10 fraudulency, as fraudulent as possible.
All right, long time Last Free Nation members, clock it. If you on your bingo card had week 1 as Dom flipping out on T1 with the 100 fraudulency scale, go ahead, mark it off. Jamada, your turn.
As to not have 100 trucks sent to my address and maybe only about 5, I'll go for about an 8.
Okay,
it's so high.
No,
Jamada, this is record-worthy high, bro.
I still think this is valid. Like, look, they didn't play that well, man. I don't know what else to say. I'm like, part of me, like the kid in me that watched T1 as a 15-year-old win worlds, like that inner fan wants to see T1 now with Faker still there domestically do well, but. Dude, they can't do it. This week 1 was still horrible, bro. So even in the DRX series, even in the DRX series. So whilst I still think there's redeeming qualities, frankly, they're still being fraudulent at home. You know, you take them out of home, no problem. You keep them there, it's still bad. So, yeah, I'm not. Yeah, go for 8 out of 10. I still think they're frauding pretty hard. Something needs to change, whether it's systems or eventually players. Who knows?
Without the hater persona, I would have rated them like a 6 maybe or a 7. So Jamada has me beat, bro. Like, okay, respect. That's what I like to see.
You're gaslighting Jamada now. Be like, I did 8 because you did 10. Now you're saying it's 6.
No, like, for T1, you can inflate anything I say negative about them by about like, you know, at least 50%. At least 50% increase on everything I say that's hateful about them. So yeah.
With let's stay there in the LCK since it's the other.
What is your take? What is the fraudulency, dGon, of T1?
The fraudulency scale is, you hear my voice crack? I was just thinking about the truck.
Yeah, you're nervous, bro. I can see you're starting to sweat. Like, Jesus Christ.
I'm not sweating. I got to practice for Monty Wolf show anyways. They're a solid 5. I think they're a solid 5 here, right? Because you are clearly changing the way this team plays, and the game broke. The game 1, the really bad game, that game broke. Doran was the only player in that team that didn't int in game number 1. In game 2, Doran made a Doran play, which is him running away and pulling like 5 players across the map with him, and the rest of the team cleans up. You're like, oh, this is my new T1. It's not we don't have Zeus, the god of thunder. We have Doran, who's like Artemis, the god of running away and letting the true god come in and clean everything up. So they just, I think, need to figure out how to play around that a little bit more, and that just takes time. And so after game 1, which is a throwaway game, that one was Gumayusi's fault. You know, I feel like they're learning how to play around him from there. And Owner getting the MVP in their second series shows that, okay, they've got that. Let's work back on that jungle synergy everywhere across the map, and then we'll go from there. So just give it a little bit of time. People in the chat being like, dGon's scared of trucks. Y'all don't know fear until you see these fans, man. The T1 fans that come at LCK Park, they all passionate.
Like jacked? Are they all just like jacked in fucking tank tops, like T1 tatted on them, or like why are they scary?
They are so passionate, and there's just so many of them, and they're so passionate, Dom. I can only say passionate.
I will say, when I hear passionate, I feel like that's what like players and people say when they get like accused of going super fucking hard in any like situation. Like if a streamer like does something, like they're like yell at chat, they completely freak out, they crash out, they just say, I'm just extremely passionate about what I do. So I don't know, this passionate word, I feel like it's changed in meaning recently. Like what does passionate really mean?
Yeah, you know what? We'll let you guys figure that one out. They're very passionate fandom in LCK. All right. Let's keep it in LCK to the reigning champs of the domestic league and Hanwha Life Esports, the guys that got the opposite side of the trade. You're thinking, hey, the 4 members that were intact are still there, and then they get Zeus, who is an upgrade over Doran. And it didn't quite go the way they wanted. They were the first team to get 2-0'd in the LCK Cup by Gen.G, who looked super good in that first series, and then almost lost to BNK Firax, who looked like paperweights in their first series. But either way, what do you make of Hanwha Life Esports after their first 2 series here, Jamada?
I mean, I think HLE, to me, at the very least, their Gen.G series, I wasn't super big on their drafts, right? If I'm gonna kind of give half a cop-out answer, I think that realistically, their first game, they probably would have gotten manhandled regardless based on how they played, but their draft did not really set them up for any success anywhere. And I think their meta read overall has been was kind of weird in that Gen.G series. And then you look towards the KD series, and generally, I think they just gave themselves significantly easier champions to play to potentially circumvent what we saw in the Gen.G series. But still, like the narrative goes, you keep those 4 players. You get rid of Doran, you get Zeus. Zeus is basically the underlying engine for the entirety of T1. And then basically what they played, maybe 50-ish minutes of League of Legends, or 60-ish minutes of total League of Legends in that first series against Gen.G. Yeah, not the best look. But hey, again, bouncing back against KT, I think lets you know that they're still HLE in the way that they did it. and how relatively dominating they were, but still, I'm not sold that they're big time frauds yet. I just think that the Gen G manhandling has maybe made us think that or maybe made us consider what exactly is going on when they come to play against some of these other top LCK teams.
Yeah, because they played against KT and they tore them apart. They tore KT apart pretty hard. So we were a little worried on the broadcast, like, hey, what is going to happen to this Baron side? No, they came back and showed their teeth a little bit. So it wasn't as dire. What do you think of them so far here, Dom?
Yeah, I think when I look at Hanwha Life, I just hate watching Peanut play Zyra. It's like, even if it's a fine game, I think that he is just not a good Zyra player. I never want to see Peanut on these types of champions. Like, I want to see Peanut play like Vi, Wukong. I want to see him play Poppy. I want to see him play Maokai, Sejuani, Skarner. Like, that's it pretty much. Like, that's pretty much all I want to see out of Peanut. Just rotating these champions. I know it's Fearless Draft and everything. But I just think that he's much better with utility than a champion like Zyra, where you have to control zones and poke, and you're not really playmaking that much in general, and you need to keep your farm high. So whenever I see him play that, it's like I always just feel like it's not going to be going Hanwha Life's way. And I think that Gen G in game 1 had just like way better macro. They did that I don't know if they got 6 grubs or 5 grubs, doesn't matter. They had advantage in grubs. I think they had 6 grubs, and they just full sent on the top turret. Just ended the game. Like, and that is what Gen G is really good at, right? They have very decisive macro where other teams are thinking, hey, do we like play 2 lanes here? Do we play 3 lanes? Do we get the grubs, go back bot? And Gen G is like full send 2 lanes. Like, they get into the play, they do it, and it's like it's very crisp when they play like that. And that's why I think they're like the favorite to win Worlds coming in. Like, this early favorite, if I were to look at all the teams, I think that they are like the best team assembled. Obviously, we have to see how Duro progresses. He's the person that is like kind of the odd man out on this team. But overall, I really like how they get in and out of their plays. And they just have such a high floor when it comes to like decision making. Like they just start out and it's like, damn, they're going to be making very good decisions throughout, and it's up to you to try to challenge those decisions. But even in matches where they lose, it feels like they're driving the game most of the time, which is, I think, the best way to win League of Legends. So I liked their Hanwha Live series. The other series, I ended up watching it back. It just seemed like the games got fucking ugly, and it was what it was. But I think that when they really lock down, especially as we get later on, like in the tournament, we get into the LCK Cup, the games generally become more controlled. And when games become more controlled, then Gen G like runs the league. So I'm very impressed with how they played in general in the Hanwha Life series. Like, that being your first game, I thought maybe they would lose something with Lehens being out. How much of the macro did he do with Canyon? Didn't seem like any of that in the first series. But yeah, I agree with the point that their drafts were much better. I thought Hanwha Life could have won game 2, but it was extremely difficult for them to get into like any winnable state. Also, just bad shit happened. Like, the Rakan just randomly inted in bot lane, and as soon as they defended the turret, and it felt like the whole game was kind of cooked from there. It was ugly, bro.
Well, then how much do you detract Hanwha Life from their appearance score if Gen G came out looking like world's favorites?
I mean, to me, not much. Like, it's stuff that I mean, Hanwha Life, the way that they lost to Gen G is kind of how they were losing to Gen G most of the year last year. Like, obviously, people remember summer finals where Hanwha Life played well. They got ran by Gen G almost the entire year. So yeah. I think that Hanwha Life aren't really fraudulent. I just thought they were going to be the second best team, and I think they'll probably just be the second best team in LCK this split at least.
All right. Rate them. Where do you put them if they're not that fraudulent, despite being champs, but you had them second?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was an upset, right? Like, when they became the champs, it wasn't like, oh, they're the champs because they're like just the best team in LCK. It was like, holy shit. Like, going into Worlds, I still thought Gen G was better than Hanwha Life. Like, it's not like that changed much. I'm like, oh shit, they outperformed them on that day. Shows clutch factor, it shows poise. Maybe they were able to use the fact that they're underdogs to mentally prepare for the series, where it's like, okay, we got to like show them what we're made of, etc. They're able to abuse some of Gen G's limitations. But I don't really think they're very fraudulent. I didn't expect them to probably lose as hard as they did, but it's not like them losing that hard made me have a different perception of them as a team. Like, I still think that they're going to be a pretty strong team. They just need to iron out macro a little bit and figure out draft. So I would say like a 3 out of 10, 2 out of 10, something like that for me.
That's so crazy that it's so high for T1 and low for Hanwha Life losing both their matches. Like, I guess you expected T1 to beat D plus like that much harder.
I mean, yeah, like I think that T1. I expect T1 when all the rosters were formed. I think Genji is the best team, Hanwha Life is the second best team, T1 would be the third best team, and then D plus would be like a fourth best team. But the way D plus looked versus T1, I just felt like they looked like they were the better team, even though they lost a game. It felt like D plus was just playing way better in that game 1 and game 3 than T1 did, for example, in their win in game 2. So I just was expecting T1 to be way better, and I think that I think the way T1 lost showed flaws in how T1 is going to be. I don't see how T1 is going to solve the problem of firepower, of having people that can like carry games with this lineup. Whereas Hanwha Life, I think they can solve their problems with draft and macro, like with reviews and stuff like that. And they have players that have had good macro before that understand it. So I just think that those problems look more solvable to me than T1's problems, because I feel like T1's problems are more like, they're more baked into what the lineup of T1 is. Whereas like Hanwha Life got out macroed by Genji. It's like no shame in the game.
All right, Jamada, you're up. What do you rate the Hanwha Life debut here in terms of the fraudulency scale?
Yeah, I mean, I'm clinging on to that very last point that Dom just mentioned, right? I don't think it's an embarrassing thing to get manhandled by Genji. It's a best of 3. Sometimes you lose games. And I don't think, like, sure, okay, gameplay stuff, not fantastic. Macro didn't look great, but I think they probably would have had more answers in-game if they didn't hamstring themselves in both drafts, but especially the game 1 draft. So I'm kind of leaning at, about a 2.5, 3 out of 10. Alarm bells aren't really ringing for me with Hanwha Life, right? They came into the next series, they looked readjusted meta-wise. They just played 2 very simple compositions to execute. One was a front to back, the other was like kind of a pick-ish comp, a skirmishing comp with the Akali Lee Sin, and Zeka obviously had a pop-off game too. So yeah, I'm not super fussed about them. I think it would have been nice to see them put up more of a fight against Genji. Then maybe I could bring the rating down to a genuine clean like 1 or 2. But yeah, I think probably around the 3 for me is where I sit with HLE. It's far less contextually embarrassing to lose to Genji than T1 losing to DK in the way that they did.
Also, I would say one last thing is watching Hanwha Life for a while. It's like a lot of the things that they lost with. It's like Peanut Zyra. We knew about that. Zika Corki, like people know Zika's not the fucking Corki guy. Like if Corki is not Giga meta, I don't want to see him playing it. Like I know he was playing it more in summer and he looked better on it after package removal, but in general, he doesn't really want to play it, right? Like this is not something where he's looking for like, oh man, I'm just gonna find like the most insane Corki angle of all time. That's the Chovy pick. Corki is a Chovy pick. Zika doesn't play it unless he should have to. And Zika is the type of guy that you want to see on Akali. You want to see him on Silas. You want to see him on Yone. Like these are the picks that are core for me of that represent who he is.
Higher damage playmaking champ, so more towards the Faker way, I'd say.
Yeah.
I don't know. The Hanwha Life draft in game 2 where you have the opportunity to 4-5 on blue side for Zeus, and you just lock in Ornn into Jace. It's just like, that's not why you bought this guy. What the fuck is this? Like, in the first match, after losing game 1, like, come on, let's go pick something around him, and instead you're just like, all right, you're on tank duty, and guess what happens? He just gets wrecked 0-7.
Yeah. And I think that that's going to be something that they learn over time, right? They got Zeus onto this lineup not to be the neutralizer that he was when he was on T1 at Worlds. Like you have a lineup where Peanut is your jungler. Peanut is like the guy who is going to be the facilitator, and you need to just be the fucking beast carry top laner that you are at your core. So these things I think will be learned over time. I'm not freaking out because of what happened.
Let's move on over to Europe, where the reigning European champions in the best of the West is struggling out of the gates. They went 0-2 and had the potentiality of going to 0-3. I think I made that word up, but they end up salvaging it with a win over SK. G2, not looking so hot. Not expected. I mean, they made a ton of roster moves, but they've done it before, and they've always been able to build around caps. Jamada, what were your expectations for this squad coming into the season, and where do they rate on the scale?
I mean, I expected a slow start. This slow, I'm unsure. I mean, frankly, as well, who they played Casey in their game 1, and I think to be fair, KC at floor have come in and performed, I think, a lot better than most people were probably expecting. That said, I don't know. It's hard to place it because as I brought up last week, you change jungle, you change support at the same time. Structurally, in most teams, those are like the foundations for a lot of things like communication and shot calling. So even with players like Caps, I think it's just going to take time to adjust. They could have realistically won the KC game, but Yike had his smite key in his keyboard, and unfortunately Scumon didn't for the big last two objectives, which obviously doesn't help. But I think overall, 1-2, not the worst, considering KC looked significantly better. BDS, I think, is always a contender in that kind of top 3 range. So I think losing to BDS in this circumstance isn't the worst. But yeah, it is definitely a little bit worrying because the overall macro was generally kind of just appalling. I wasn't super thrilled with a lot of the decisions that G2 made throughout the weekend.
Just again, chat and friends at home and Mr. G2 social media person who's always here. He said, generally, kinda appalling. Just, you know, he put kind of an appalling and generally all together in one sentence. What the fuck?
Because with G2, you always get kind of a mixed bag domestically, right? Where they'll have these stretches of really strong and very consistent, and I don't want to say formulaic, but decisions that make sense, and then there'll just be a one random like what the fuck moment in the middle of it all, and then they'll just go back to doing the good stuff. It felt like there was more what the fuck moments and very few this is really sound decision making back to back out of them this weekend. But again, I think that's to be expected. You change jungle support, you're building a kind of a new iteration of the roster at that point, even if you keep the core members that everyone's very familiar with, right? So yeah, alarm bells aren't ringing. I need to see them play against Fnatic. I need to see them play against Giants, actually, as apparently Giants
look good.
Yeah, Giants look pretty good. Those are the two teams I need to see them play against, and then I feel like I can make more of a sound judgment. But I think this opening weekend, had they lost to SK, I would genuinely be very worried, right?
I mean, they were one big team fight in the bottom lane, a pentakill away from like losing.
I know, but I can, as a bit of a, well, you can hear the accent coming out of my mouth. You probably know what team I like quite a lot.
Arsenal. You told us.
Arsenal, yeah, I told you beforehand. I am an Arsenal supporter. God forbid our circumstances right now. But yeah, I can give a little bit more grace and I can give a little bit more leeway. But yeah, even in the SK game, it's hard to be happy with how G2 played. Again, though, I still need to see them play against the big teams, and as long as they make it into playoffs, I think that the best of one G2 is always very different to best of G2, or best of 3 or more G2. Yeah, that's my stance. I'm not super sold on the fraud alert right now. I need to see week 2, and then if week 2 looks exactly like week 1 in performance level results, like regardless of what the results are, then I'm ringing alarm bells.
All right, I'm putting it in now. Make sure to have G2 under fraud alert next week. Okay. All right. What do you make of G2 here after a couple games? Are you going in on them, or are you giving them a lot of benefit of the doubt here, despite these changes?
I'm not giving them a ton of benefit of the doubt. I think there's a couple things that I want to, just try to remind people. When the G2 lineup was formed that had Yike and Mickey X, like Yike and Mickey had played on XL the year before. Yike had been coming from ERLs, obviously. And Hans was joining off a pretty bad year in TL, probably the worst year of his career. When they started out, they looked significantly different than this G2 looked. Like they were shitting on everyone. When that team was formed, it's like they had a playstyle and they looked like they understood what they were doing. I think losing Mickey X actually hurts a lot. I am personally somebody who has thought that Hilly and Mickey X have been the two best supports for like essentially the entirety of the of modern League of Legends in Europe. There was a small blip of time where Trimby was in the conversation because he was able to play range champions better than those two. But outside of like that one split and a very small portion of the year, like a very small portion of that split, essentially just the end of that split in 2022. I've thought that Mickey was essentially the best, and then there's times where Hilly was the best. And because of that, it's like, I just don't really believe that Labrov is going to do what the team needs in order to like make the game feel comfortable for other people. Like Labrov I've never thought that he was a better player than Mickey X. So Skewmond, I'm going to give him more time, but I don't really think that Labrov is going to do for the team what they need. Like, I can't imagine them being better with this iteration than they were before. I think they could maybe become equally as good as at their peak. But I wasn't like really sold on the changes. And obviously behind the scenes, people are saying that G2 actually wanted to get Paris because he was a player that was coming in, really hyped up rookie as well. They wanted to get him, and they weren't able to get him. So instead, they had to sign Labrov last minute. So that's what I've heard is the reasoning behind it. I just don't know if like the team makes that much sense to me, because you're essentially hiring a rookie jungler and support to try to fix, or not rookie jungler and end up support, but you have a rookie jungler and a support that's not like super great at map control, and you're trying to have that fix a team that had issues in that area. Like, I don't really see that being the solution ever in this case. So it's hard for me to like see what they've gained from it outside of maybe having a slightly better jungler if Skewmond is this mechanical freak. Obviously wasn't able to show it yet, but he looks pretty good. Like, I think that people were too hard on him with the smites. He missed a couple fucking smites. Who gives a fuck? Like, you miss smites, bro. Every jungler misses smites every now and then. Maybe he's a little nervous he missed some smites. Overall, his gameplay was good, though. Like, his individual gameplay was good. It looked like he had hands. The way he fought made a lot of sense. So I thought he was pretty good. I just don't know if this actually helps G2 that much. The one other thing I would say is that the BDS game, I don't mind them losing that game. Like, they fucking just giga through it on Otacon. That's all that happened in that game, really. Like, they played a much better game. That was probably the best game they played, which is funny because it's one of the ones they lost. But they just giga through it on Otacon. That's it. So I think that is something that we that we need to consider here. That like it should have just been a 2-1. It's kind of a freak occurrence that it ended up being a 1-2. And it's a new objective. I'll give them more leeway with throwing it Otacon because it is something that hasn't existed. So, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with everything on G2. I'm not going to say they're not fraudulent at all, but it's also one of those things where I'm not. They're fraudulent, but not because of like how the week went and how they played. They're fraudulent because of their roster building and what these players are going to bring to the table. And I guess the main person that I'm not sold on is Labrov. I think Labrov he's always had this issue of seeming like he's the type of player that is a stage choker almost. Even though he's good at times on stage, it just feels like he gets in his own head. You even see it at the end of series. In LEC last year, there was a really good example where there's a bunch of picks that are up. Like, Leona is like one of the best champions in the game at that point, and he is self-countering. Like, enemy team is going Nautilus blind. Mickey X is blinding Nautilus into him, and he's like, Rakan. Like, and it's like, bro, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, why are you like so afraid to just pick like the champions? Like, he was essentially becoming a rel one trick at a point, and then when that got removed, he fell apart in a way. So I'm just not super confident that he is going to help them more than Mickey helped them. I think Mickey is generally really underrated, though. I think that people look at him dying a lot, and since the average fan is not going to be watching the game the same way somebody who's like analyzing the game is watching the game, because you're watching it for entertainment, right? They're just going to see like, oh, Mickey's inting here. Oh, what is he doing here? But they're not looking at all the good things he does, where it's like, oh my God, like he just actually solo got full bottom side vision. And if he just didn't int, like, this would have been insane for them because they can set up their next play a lot earlier. So I respect how Mickey plays, and I think that he's generally become underrated.
What do you rate it number wise? Score
4.
Yeah.
Jamada, what do you got?
Yeah, I was at a 4 too. I don't really have much else to add. I think that realistically, Labrov is always going to be a side grade at best and potentially a downgrade at worst. And it really depends on how they want to build out Skewmon, because like Dom mentioned, when they played with Yike, they looked completely different at the very start. And I think more importantly, they actually played around Yike and his want to play some weird picks from time to time as well. Like, they've formed entire drafts around that. Obviously, it's only a 1 weekend game sample, but if we don't see that out of G2 soon, or like a consistent trend of them trying to maybe prop Scumond up as a true enabler for the laners, then I'm not sure what they're actually going to end up achieving with this roster.
When guys start getting up out of the age and out of the spotlight of League of Legends, they're going to start getting other jobs and move on with their careers and, become entrepreneurs or IT guys. That's when I think the good stories are going to come out, like whatever the fuck happened this offseason with this team. Because that, like, why did they move on? Was it money? Was it butting heads? All the stories that could be happening behind. Was it, we've heard what's happened with Fnatic and Worlds way back in the day. So, like, that stuff, when that stuff comes out, it's going to be very fascinating. And I think this G2 roster has completely shifted their paradigm now, and we won't know until those stories come on out, or maybe you'll hear it on the sack down or something.
Maybe.
Speaking of teams that made some off-season changes, and unlike G2, it felt like this was a win. Invictus Gaming welcomed home Rookie back to the squad. The Shy back on in. It feels like boys are back in town, and they get bopped by Dom's,
my new baby,
your old love child, born again with Doinb now at the helm, and it's on here because there was high expectation for these world champs coming back together and thinking like, okay, cool, like they're gonna be good now. They've got Rookie, they've got firepower. And, their first test, they stumble at it. It's not an easy test, but Doinb's been streaming for the last couple of years. You've got parts of the OMG roster that now have come back together with PP God and Aki back on in. And it's like, okay, cool. This should be a good win. If you're like training a boxer to like win a title fight, you got to get him the fight before the title fight. And they trip at the first hurdle. So what did you make of this IG team just kind of not getting the job done here, Jamada, in their first series, a 3-1 loss to NIP?
It's kind of a Doinb diff, man. I don't know what else to say. Like, a lot of this series to me was very centered around mid, and Doinb's very, very out there picks, right? It was Lee Sin mid, Ryze as well, which we're not seeing like a lot basically anywhere else. It was entirely him. So, to me, I think not only did IG got hands checked, but they got macro checked quite a bit. I mean, I don't know. It felt like a true total loss throughout a lot of this series for IG. There wasn't really too many redeeming things to bring up, unfortunately. I can't even defend them. Like, I was super hype and super happy to see this IG roster come. I can't defend that loss. Like, that was a true beating of a 3-1 to me.
They were just worse. They looked worse. Like, they look like the worst team. Yeah. They look like they would have just got beat like multiple series in a row.
Yeah, it could have been a 3-0. The scoreboard of that first game, I don't think was indicative of the game itself. It was like 19-8 or something like that, and it seemed a lot more one-sided. But it wasn't. It was decided pretty late. It felt like it was decided pretty late, and then the other games, yeah, it was very exciting to see Doinb just at the very end of the series, like pop off. It felt like he was yelling at him or cursing at him or whatever in the player camps. And that wasn't the same kind of fire IG brought. Does that bother you or make you nervous? I know that you love the other team, but IG had expectations behind them, Dom.
So for me, I have a different angle on this.
Okay.
I think that it was beautiful to watch Rookie int the Shy for once. Because normally the Shy inted him for so many fucking years. And now Rookie is like coming in there. He's like, oh, you wanna, yeah, you remember what you did to me in fucking 2021? You remember what you did to me in 2020? Watch this shuffle. And then he just eased into the whole enemy team and kills himself. Like, that to me, that shit looked intentional. That shit looked like he was getting his get back live on stage. So I fucked with it personally. Like, I was hyped watching that shit. It made me feel really good watching IG, just punish the Shy for everything that he's done, bro. You can't get away with everything the Shy did for so many years scotch-free. Like, you gotta get some type of punishment, and we're getting to see that now. So well played to Rookie. Thank you for this.
Therapy session on full display is the angle that Tom's going with. We not worried about the gameplay itself, or just like what Jamada said, is it just a Doinb diff and galvanizing the young guys over on the opposite side.
I think they're sure and beat. Sorry, Scott. I think that NIP after that showing, they're probably just the best team in the group. Because FPX and RNG, there's no those two look horrible. So if IG can't topple those guys, then I think IG have bigger issues to worry about than losing to NIP in the way that they did. I'm still, of course, expectations against what happened, right? Like you always have to weigh those factors in. Still not fantastic. I like this new angle, Dom, of Rookie just getting his get back, and I might have to steal it.
On the LPL English?
On the LPL English, yeah, I might have to steal it the next time I hopefully get to cast an IG series. Fair. But yeah, again, no real big redeeming qualities. I fear on the fraud alert, the score's gonna have to be very high. It's got to be very high after this NIP series.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that RNG and FPX series. That was painful to watch. Unlike the series that happened today when we started recording, it was the Thunder Talk and EDG. That one was at least kind of entertaining. The RNG and FPX suck, so you're right. Hopefully, IG gets the bounce back here. What do you put them at in terms of the fraudulency scale? One game in their Group D run here, Jamada.
It's got to be a 9. It's got to be a 9, at least. At least a 9. No, I mean, look, if I'm putting T1 in their context at an 8, then IG has to be higher, just by default. Out macroed, out hands, you can, despite playing against Lee Sin mid, you could even argue out drafted. So I think that says a lot about how their week went. And hopefully, I can't recall if they have one more series before the Chinese New Year break or not. They do. They've got one more series, and it's RNG. So they've got RNG, and then they've got the big Chinese New Year break. If they, God forbid, lose to RNG, it's going to an 11. But I expect they should win, and then just regroup and rethink what the hell happened in the NIP series, and hope that you don't see a repeat of that against any other big team once you wrap around to the next portion of the LPL.
All right, Dom, what you got?
I think what people also need to consider, because I mean, it's a new format. People haven't seen too much of it yet. What people need to understand about this format is that if you lose, they're essentially the way the groups work is there's 2 good teams, 2 good bad teams. There's 2 good teams, 2 bad teams. So there should be 2 teams that get out. There's 2 teams that will be eliminated. The team that wins the group gets double elimination. The team that gets second in the group gets single elimination, best of 5s. So this already is a huge deal. Like IG losing to NIP, that probably guarantees that NIP is going to win the group. They're going to be coming in as, a team that will play against a BLG, an AL, maybe even Top Esports, Weibo, these caliber of teams. And then IG, in order to get to the next stage, like there's 2 good teams in other groups. They could draw a team like Top Esports in the first round, or a team like AL, whoever gets second in that group, in the first round. Like they can draw teams that are legitimate. I think TT is a team that could potentially beat IG in the forms that they're in. So they have already got an uphill battle. Like this split is going by fast, and because these are best of 5s, they have a lot of impact on your overall seeding. So I'm gonna say that like fraudulency wise, they're 7, but I don't think that they're getting top 4 this split. If that was the expectation, I could think you could throw that out the window. Like you essentially have to win 2 best of 5s in order to do that. And I just can't see them winning 2 best of 5s against top 8 teams in the form that they're in the future, even because of the issues that the team already has, already showed. Mechanically, I think they're not as good as people expect. And their macro can only get them so far, and also the Shy ruins a lot of good macro plays. That's historically always been the Shy's problem, is that like you'll end up in a play where, okay, he's in good position, your team's contesting an objective, then he just gets caught and just dies, and then it's a 4v5 and you lose the game. Like that's always been who the Shy was. So I just think that this is going to be a lot rougher than people expect. I think this is like a split where they finish like in the essentially like the 6th slot, something like that. They finish like 5th, 6th. But they don't look close to as good as the top teams.
For bonus points here, Dom, you put NIP as your 7th placed ranked team in the El Dominico LPL power rankings at the beginning of the season. Yep. Do you move in front of them? One spot was IG. Obviously, you put them ahead of that, but after their performance here, do you put them further up than that?
I mean, I think guaranteed they're going to at least be top 6, right? Because all they have to do is beat RNG and FPX and they're guaranteed top 6. If they beat RNG and FPX, then they're top 4, which means they're in the upper bracket, which means that they already are minimum top 6 in the LPL. So yeah, I'll definitely move them up. DoinB is way better than I thought he would be. Like, it's crazy how good he played compared to expectations. Like, this is his first series that he's played since 2022. It's been 2.5 years since he's played a series. He didn't go to Worlds in 2022 either, right? So him coming in and having such a good feel for the game, his laning was crisp, his team fighting was really fucking good. It looked like he was back to shot calling everything and being like, it was like, God damn, bro. Like, he didn't miss a beat. Like, normally when players come back after a long break, they have to warm up, get into the flow. The Shy took 1 year off. You saw how he looked in like his first series. He still had issues. Oh, nice. dGon just left as soon as I started talking well about DoinB.
Sorry. Yeah, my bad. The SK2.
Wait, are we still on? What's happening?
Yeah, we're still on.
I think it's just dGon.
Okay.
But
yeah, to finish my point, I thought that there was a chance that DoinB didn't play that well originally and he gets into it. That's why I had them at a 7. I thought they'd be decent, but would take some time to get DoinB acclimated. Nah, fuck that. Like, he just came in and he's a beast. If he plays like a beast, this team can actually do damage.
All right. Well, hopefully he'll be able to do that, and it'll be a ton of fun to watch. The mixture of two things that you loved that you didn't know how much you needed together, DoinB and the core of this old OMG roster. That was fraud alert, even though we did some NIP glazing. If you agree or disagree with some of these ratings, a fucking, what was it, 8 from Jamada for T1, let us know in the comments below. And we'll get to them next week. That's just... They weren't even into this section. We just threw them in there. All right. Well, now it's time to shout out one of our sponsors to make Power Spike go. It's our friends over at Turtle Beach. Boom. Got them on right here. Our friends at Turtle Beach have you covered when it comes to headsets because winter has arrived, but don't panic. It's not a bad thing. It's an excuse. An excuse to cancel all your plans and slap on your Turtle Beach headset and game until the sun finally comes back on up. For a marathon, winter, cold weather gaming session, you're going to want the world's most comfortable headset with superhuman hearing technology. Turtle Beach's new Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset picks up so much crystal clear sound, it's basically cheating. Even if the snowblower is going off outside, you'll hear every footstep, every reload, and every enemy sneaking up on you like they're stomping through your living room in tap dancing shoes. And Turtle Beach headsets are so freaking comfortable, you'll feel like you're wearing a marshmallow on the top of your head. And best of all, the Stealth 700 has the industry's first ever cross-play dual wireless transmitter system. That's right, you can seamlessly switch between your consoles and your PC with just a click of a button, and it gets even better. While being connected to your console, the Stealth 700 can also connect to your phone for music streaming or taking calls at the same time. Now, for a limited time, get 10% off your entire order with the code SPIKE at turtlebeach.com. Don't miss on out. That's 10% off your entire order at turtlebeach.com with the promo code SPIKE. Thanks to our friends over at Turtle Beach. And again, being able to swap between devices, because all of you that are watching the show, we know are capital G gamers and play multiple different games on multiple different devices. It's one of the coolest pieces of technology you can have out there. And obviously your boys using it as well. So head on over to turtlebeach.com, use the code SPIKE, get 10% off your entire order and level up your gaming right now. Thanks to our friends over at Turtle Beach. Okay, next up, we got ourselves some Fearless Draft talk. Some of you in the chat wanted to bring it up earlier when we're asking new changes to the patch, but that's not a patch change. That's a season change, and that's our segment for Keep or Kick. Are we keeping it? Are we kicking it? What changes will we make, or what do we love about it? Let's get to it. All right, Fearless Draft. We've seen a lot of champion diversity. That's probably also what's led to some of the clunky macro decisions and maybe not the cleanest play right off the bat because it's not exactly the same. How do you make of it so far here, Jamada? Like, what do you like about it? What do you don't like about it?
muted. My bad. I'll get the bad out of the way. I still miss the old school traditional kind of, these are the power picks, this is stuff you have to trade. And, I feel like you lose a lot of nuance when you go into Fearless Draft, and it's like, these are the S tier picks. If you go for X, then you're losing Y and Z, and that is kind of the trade. It gets repetitive, and I think the reason why we're here at Fearless Draft, actually, when balance doesn't change, and you hold on to these champions for months, or in the case of Cassante, 2 years, and that's why we end up in situations like Fearless. That said, I think that hard Fearless has been a blessing to watch. It is just really fun. It is just really fun to see teams actually come out in some cases. Like, I think it was, we've seen LNG, I want to say, bring out Vladimir 2 times, or maybe it was another team that also brought out the Vlad. I think it was today, actually, in the series, in the LPL, where they're just bringing out stuff that they know they're not going to pick again, and it's like curveball stuff, and then it leaves up stronger picks for later on in the series, where it's like, okay, cool, if the curveball works, fantastic, we get a game win out of it. Then we still have the power picks up and available. And I think there's going to be far more developments around strategies of Fearless Draft, whether it's this or other, that hopefully does bring and provide as much depth as the traditional no Fearless Draft being implemented. But I am still going to miss that old feel of, hey, these are the meta champions, these are the sacrifices you make, and then the also kind of developed and evolving metas of things like international tournaments, right? So many times in international tournaments, there is like a defined meta by a team picking up a counter to something that has basically been running the entire tournament. And I think the more that we go in towards Fearless Draft, we're kind of going to lose that aspect of strategy when it comes to drafting, which I think is a big loss, in my opinion. But I feel like for now, Fearless brings enough freshness and enough potential new strategy that I think it's very much a keep, and I'm kind of happy that it's here for the time being.
What do you think, Dom?
Yeah, for me on Fearless Draft, I think that this, number one, I just like it. Objectively, I think it's, subjectively, but I think it's just good for the game. I think that seeing more champions is just going to be good for the viewer base, because it's more fun. Like, especially when you get into Game 4 and Game 5, I feel like Best of 3 Fearless is not as fun as Best of 5, because we haven't even had a Game 5 yet in LPL, have we? I don't think we've had a Game 5 in LPL yet.
RNG FPX, but otherwise no. That was like the only.
Did they actually make it to Game 5?
No, I thought that was 4,
right? Was it 4 as well? For some reason in my mind it's logging as a 5-game.
It was
series.
4. No, RNG FPX
it was 4.
We haven't even had a 5-game series, but I feel like when you get into Game 4, and obviously if in Game 4 it's already like this, it will also be true for Game 5. I feel like that's when you start seeing the really like unique team comps where you're like, oh shit, like Yasuo's coming out, LeBlanc's coming out, like these mid laners that are fun start appearing, and then the AD carries get really pinched, and you get down to like this team's playing Jinx, or we have like people going back to Ziggs, and people like Xayah, which isn't that strong right now, also comes out. I like seeing the difference that you get in 4-game series and 5-game series. I feel like in 3-game series, I don't think Fearless is that big of a deal, because you kind of just like there's enough stuff that's good in the game that by the 3rd game everyone's still playing on things that are very comfortable. But like when you get into Game 4, Game 5, obviously it changes. I also think that Fearless could, like, this is a time where I think the game is relatively balanced. There are some things that are OP. Cassante is OP, obviously. Kalista is considered OP in pro play. I actually think that it's only OP if you speak Asian languages. That's kind of my take on Kalista. Like, the more English or other languages that you speak, the better that it is to go things like Corki, for example.
No, didn't Masu play well at Worlds on Kalista? I feel like he played well on Kalista and Varus. Didn't he?
Did he play Kalista? He didn't play versus Gen G, did he? Like Kaisa.
He got Gen G.
He played. I mean, look, I just think that Kalista is the type of champion that requires team effort. It requires the ability to really utilize how strong it is around objectives, and playing on the same side and using the laning to the laning advantage that it gives you to really win the game. So there's always that. I think that, so my overall point is that there are times where I think Fearless will be a lot better than even right now. I think right now the game is relatively balanced, so you have things that would be picked, and if the game was a normal draft, It would be the type of thing that Skarner would be banned every single game, Cassante would be banned every game, and then you just trade the other picks. Like maybe Rumble would be banned by one of the teams, and there would be enough like variance in the way people draft because things are relatively balanced. I think where Fearless ends up being really nice is when you have other things like incorporated into the game. Like when you have fucking Lucian Nami versus Zeri Lulu or Yumi, when we had that fucking meta that was complete cancer to watch for super long periods of time, that's when it would be like, please give me Fearless draft so I can like watch some real League of Legends. I'm so tired of watching these teams trade, because what ended up happening was neither team would actually think that those champions would be good enough to ban. They would ban other stuff, and then they would just trade every single game and be happy with both sides of the trade. And it's like, I'm losing my mind watching Sivir Yumi versus fucking Nami Lucian versus Lulu Zeri, etc. Like I was so tired of watching that fucking meta. So I think that in other situations it could be a lot better than it is now. But yeah, I don't know. I just like it in general. I think it gives it freshness, and then I think it's also more fun to co-stream. Like for what I do, I really like being able to dissect the draft. I feel like it's like, okay, all this is banned, so now you're looking at like, you're looking for a certain identity of champion, but a lot of those ones are removed. So you're really trying to find like the through line. And I feel like it's just really rewarding to snipe those picks as a co-streamer. We're being like, oh shit, this could be like a Sion angle. And then like Sion comes out, you're like, oh shit, like this could be maybe a Yasuo angle or like a Zyra angle. Like you just can find the picks that are still available there. And I don't know if like viewers play that kind of game themselves, or if they're like, they do that when they watch, but I just like being able to kind of see the game through a different lens. I feel like it gives more skill to the drafting component of things.
Yeah, I would. When I watch your co-stream or LS co-stream or any, and you know, even Cadrill's co-stream, that is probably one of the most fun parts that I have. It's watching how quickly you guys dissect what the draft is before the coaches can on the desk or on the stage, and give the multiple different options that are there, especially when we get to the 4-5 bands. And so that to me is really good to hear that you enjoy that. What I would change about it, or maybe the next change, is not moving towards what Dota does, but kind of what Dota does, where we now start banning in different chunks. Right now we have 2 banning phases, right? We have 1, 2, 3, and then picks, and then 4, 5. What if we add a ban, or if we start spreading it out a little bit? It's 1, 2, break, pick, ban, pick, ban, and then pick, right? Something like that, right? I think that's where it gets a little bit more unique, because there is a part of me that still wants to see the iconic players play the iconic champions that they're known for. And I would like it to have the opportunity to have that happen, because it seems like what's happened is people are mainly sticking on the same 3 bans throughout Fearless, because it's not, hey, once it's banned, it's gone. It's once it's played, it's gone. So you can just keep those 3 bans throughout whenever you're on blue side or red side. I guess whenever you're on blue side, you keep the same blue side bans. So that would be the next evolution of it. And I hope that coaches and analysts, it's more on analysts now, start figuring out different strategies to it, because kind of like this whole patch, it feels like the whole infrastructure of the way that we look at things is behind. Like when we look at pick ban rates and what's been played rates, those are all skewed, because nothing should have 100% play rate. Nothing can have 100% play rate. Nothing can have 100%. Well, I guess it could be banned every single game, but there should be different stats to quantify, like, hey, what is the game 1 first pick rate across the world? What is the game 2 first pick rate across the world? Something like that. I just feel like as a whole industry, we're a little bit further behind this set. And then once we get caught up with this set of how drafting works with Fearless and the infrastructures behind it, we should start segmenting the bans a little bit more so that we get a little bit different variety on some of the OPs that go back and forth. Do you feel like that's too broken? Like would that break the way that drafting happens here, Dom?
I mean, I think it would just completely change it. You'd have to think about draft in a whole different way, because now it's like you're very locked into like the first 3, and then there's the break, and then the bottom 2. So like there's a lot of things that are very specific here. Like you can't, like for example, if you drafted like that, you're not really looking on like we're trading, like you can trade things on 3. It's like, let's say Rumble is first picked. Instead of it being the type of thing where it's like, oh, we can go like Yone Sejuani and take it away from him, and then on 3 we can go Galio. Like, let's say these types of picks are up. Like, you have like an idea of like what could actually counter what the enemy team has. You end up in a situation where it's like, okay, well, do we want to either counter the Rumble or do we want to deny their champions? But then also, like, it goes deeper because, you know, they can't pick both those champions then. So like now maybe the strategy becomes more dumbed down because they don't have the ability to like set up their whole comp. I feel like the 3 is a good way to like set up an identity for a comp, and then the 4 or 5 are like bans to ban out like the niche things that make sense. Now, adding a ban at the beginning I think could be fine. But I also think that this is a problem mainly for like best of 3 Fearless, where you have to keep the same bans the whole time, because it's much more okay to try something out in a best of 5 in Fearless. And we see it all the time. Like, for example, TT lost the first game today. It was no problem. They ended up winning the series anyway. They're the better team. I think it's more okay to leave something OP up in a best of 5 in Fearless and be like, okay, we can beat it. We believe we can beat it. But even if we don't beat it, it's okay. It's banned for the rest of the series. Then it is in a best of 3. When you're in a best of 3, it's like you might as well just ban Kalista, Rumble, Skarner every single time on red and just be like, that's our bans, you know? So I think that that's something that gets alleviated by longer series in Fearless. That's what I would say.
Jamada, what do you make of it? These ideas to changes towards bans.
I mean, honestly, I think there's room for it to be very interesting. It will depend on how you'd segment it. One thing I was also thinking about was, I can't remember, what season did they add the second 2 bans? Was it about season 7 or 8 when they kind of just recognized?
Was it not season
6? I feel like it was
halfway through 6.
Okay,
Yeah,
it might have even been earlier than that then. When they just realized, we have loads of champions in the game. I think it's about time we go to 5 bans. I wonder if they ever consider just reapplying that logic, you know, now, right? And they move to like 4-3 or something. They just add 2 more bans and they just keep it like separated. Because we are definitely approaching that point, right? I know Monty, I'm actually in his seat now, speaks a lot about how the sort of, especially the live service games as a whole, but Riot have added so many champions that it's kind of a different topic, but obviously it makes the learning curve for League like different or harder rather. At the pro level, it's like, well, there's now so many champions and the meta kind of continues to grow generally in terms of its like ceiling and its floor, that it makes you wonder whether or not you actually need those bans. I think 5 is fine for now. I wouldn't mind a different segmentation of it where it's like, hey, maybe if you're blue side, you get first pick, but you only get 2 bans, and on blue side you get 2 bans at first with first pick, and then on red you only get 1 ban, but you get 2 picks, and then you basically inverse ban the amount that you have, and then you still end up with 5 bans total, or some kind of system like that, right? Where it still feels kind of fair, but it's different. So it's, you see what they pick, and it's like, oh, if they go this, then they probably ideally want champions like XYZ, so we can take those away. I think that's something they could maybe look at if they really wanted to change the formula of pick ban. But I would always be more in line with simpler changes, like just adding more bans in total. Because I don't want things to get super convoluted at the like pro level when it comes to systems like these.
Yeah, go ahead, Dom.
I was going to say I personally like more bans because I feel like just in general, I like when teams are not just drafting off a spreadsheet where it's like, okay, you know, like we ban this, and then versus like this guy, he likes these, you know, counter picks, so we'll just ban those, and then you're just done with the draft. I like when the draft is evolving and there's more like chaos in that part of the game, and the coaches actually have to think through everything fast. I feel like that shows like a lot about a team. It's like, okay, they go this, or this, like, and then deciding through that whole decision tree is entertaining to me. So I would like to see like maybe 2 bans added. I mean, there's been so many champions, like the 4-3 bans. I think that would be actually pretty interesting, or maybe even just 4 bans at the top. Just because that's something that I think kind of separates like coaches or just teams, because, you know, obviously the coach doesn't do 100% of the draft in every team. Most of the time the players are giving input. It's like which guys can like sort out that puzzle real time quick enough, as opposed to it being like very standardized where, you know, it's like, oh, we drafted Renekton. Okay, 4 or 5. We banned like Gnar, obviously, probably Jace, and then we just go from there. You know, to me, it just adds another layer of thought to it that I just think would be interesting to see people work through.
Yeah. And Jamada, you were right. It was 2017. I definitely thought it was before that, but 2017 season 7 Ardent Sensor meta was the first time they introduced the 10 ban system. So it's been almost 8 years now since they've made a tweak to the banning system, and that would spice things up. But like what both of you have reiterated, it would require a whole new shift of thinking of what's strong, what's not, and we'd have like Reddit complaining about like, oh, blue side's broken, red side's broken, blah blah blah. What do you think of Fearless Ban, chat? Let us know in the comments below. It's been pretty good for diversity, and we haven't seen the peak of it yet. A best of 5 requiring Fearless Bans here at the top level of competition so far in 2025. All right, before we get to our next segment, it's time to remind you guys for our final sponsor group of the day, and it's our friends over at Mando. Now, there's been a lot of changes we've made into 2025, maybe like lose weight, maybe call your mom and dad a little more, maybe get the esports team that you now own a couple of wins and make some content for you guys. But I think a big one is to stop being so damn smelly. And one way to do that are our friends over at Mando Whole Body Deodorant. For me, I've raved about it before, but I use their deodorant on my feet because it's made exactly for all different parts of your body, including your balls, your pits, your belly button, your butt crack, and of course the feet, just in case you get, a little bit of that athletic smell when you're out doing all the athlete stuff. All the products are baking soda free and paraben free. They're safe to use all over your body, created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And so they created a product to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. And it's clinically proven to control odor better than just shower soap alone. 12 hours after showered, the average man's grundle odor was a level 5 out of a 10. But with Mando, the average grundle odor is a level 0 out of 10. Jamada, stinky grundles are the worst, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They are just the worst. Stinky grundles. It's the worst thing to have on a man as well. Come on.
He's going right off the deep end. Want to try America's #1 whole body deodorant formula right now? You can find them at Walmart, Target, or other retailers across the country. For the best details, head on over to shopmando.com. And, now it's time to remind you guys about our code that we got for you, because we've got you covered with a special starter pack. It comes with the solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like the mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And as a special offer for listeners, new customers can get 5% off a starter pack with our exclusive code SPIKE. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack code using the code SPIKE at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and keep that grundle nice and confident from head to toe with Mando. Thanks to our friends over at Mando. And there it is. Jamada's in. He's done.
He's been indoctrinated into the grundle.
I wasn't even ready for it. I didn't know it was happening. I didn't know that was getting tossed to me. So thank you, dGon. Right off the deep end, like you said.
No. I knew you'd be ready.
Yeah.
Head on over to shopmando.com. Use the code SPIKE. Thank you to our friends over at Mando. Good shit, Jamada. That was really good. All right, last one. We're moving to the West, not to NA because they haven't played yet. They've just been still organizing who's playing from what region and who's going to play who. But the LEC, because it's kind of confusing. It used to be like G2, everybody else, and Mad Lions makes worlds. Mad Lions Koi make worlds. But now we got a region. We have Los Gigantes, who I used to just say that to meme their team because, they weren't that good. And now all of a sudden they're in first place. So the Galaxy Brain Club conversation is who's actually good in the LEC. And who will be EU's hope at the end of 2025? Let's get to it. The Galaxy Brain Club. All right, Jamada, I'm going to throw this one to you first. The boys in the LEC cooked up a decent week of games. I mean, Dom did tweet out one that like hurt to watch and was terrible. Thankfully, I missed that one. But, you know, Carmine Corp came out swinging 2-1. Fnatic, the old guard, back up at 2-1. Los Gigantes, like I said, 3-0. What have you made of the league so far?
You know, right now, not a part of the LEC core team anymore. I've got to say, script writers, I love those guys out there. They've been doing a fantastic job with this stuff, man. I can't lie. Opening week, crazy. Giant X being 3-0, I think, is both a surprise, but also, like, I don't want to say not one. It's just kind of look at the run of schedule. You do kind of expect the players that they have to run over these teams a little bit, right? SK, I don't think anyone's really had super high expectations around. Rogue, yes, roster changes generally have kind of looked more of a positive, but they still play like Rogue. And also, Giant X Rogue gave us look, Giant X might be 3-0, but they gave us Giant X Rogue, that 60-minute game, which apparently you're saying you didn't see, which is probably better for your eyes than.
Oh, that wasn't the horrible game.
That wasn't the one. That
wasn't even the horrible. What? Okay, we'll get to that.
The Heretics Rogue one that started off the LEC. That was the game that made me want to just end my life. Like it was no action. Everyone just AFK. It was some of like the most pussified, but also bad macro. Like there was no redeeming qualities of that game at all. The game ended with like 12 kills in like 40 minutes. It was a horrible, horrible eyesore of a game. That was the one that got me.
Yeah. God, I forgot that happened. You're right. I don't know. I still feel like the way that Giant X Rogue played out, was it like 5 elders or 4? At least it was entertaining. At least it was entertaining. You know, at least my heart rate went above 100 watching.
It was fun.
Game. Yeah,
they had the Rel engage like versus Otacon. It was the only time we've ever seen Otacon like be a bad
just
usage of
lose.
it.
Yeah, just straight up like lose, right? But yeah, I think for me, I always felt like Giant X would probably be good at some point this year. I didn't necessarily expect them to come into this week being 3-0 though. Again, strength schedule does help, but Nora and Jun not under the pressure of existing in Fnatic and that system. Obviously having a much better looking time in their opening weekend. I feel like Closer brought a lot of strong looking snap decision engage making sort of play to KC's, and it's kind of seems like a more or less similar deal here. And obviously Jackie's as a rookie had a very, very fantastic 2024. And he's more or less continuing that trend now in 2025. So I think top to bot, this Giant X Rockstar has a lot to, speak about positively anyway. To see them open 3-0 is just fantastic. Oh, and obviously Lot is there, and Lot has just fulfilled his role in the top lane all 3 games. It's kind of just the nature of top lane, unfortunately, for a lot of players, especially in Europe. But he's also done his job. So I don't really have any qualms of how Giant X have played, with the exception, of course, of what transpired in that Rogue game. It feels almost like blasphemy to mention. It was that bad looking back at it. But yeah, otherwise, the big surprise is obviously just not seeing G2 at the top end of the table at the end of a week 1.
Dom, is it? Can you trust this? Can you trust this gameplay so far? I mean, I know you're not going to like co-stream all the games, but
Look, I can't say that the results are necessarily going to be better. Like, does this mean that LEC gets a team out of Swiss? Like, who knows? That like a lot of that is going to be fucking random and shit. But what I will say is that the league looks better as a whole. Like, it is definitely a more solid league as a whole. My problem with EU last year is like almost all the teams were fucking bad. Like before Mad Lions went on their run, they were like bad for most of the season. People forgot because they started good and they ended good. So everyone conveniently forgot everything in the middle. But like in summer season, they were bad. In spring season, they were bad. They were just a team that, finished like 8th. They were losing the majority of their games. They ended up with like a 40% win rate on the year. I think they bumped it up to like 45 after play-ins and stuff at Worlds. The whole point is that there were not many teams that were playing good. Like BDS was the 3rd best team throughout the year, but they were like, you could tell that they weren't that great of a team. When you were watching them, you're like, okay, I mean, they're fine. They're okay. but that's not what you want to see out of BDS. I think the tweet that Thorne got a lot of hate for, where he's like, "Oh, it's a barometer for the league." I think that was actually really accurate. Like in a healthy league, you want teams like that BDS team to be like the 4th or 5th best team. Like they're solid, they're good, they're like the team that kind of gatekeeps the top and the bottom of the league. But they should not be a team that's like one of the best teams in the league. And they should have went to finals in winter, assuming that they didn't bench Adam because of behavior and stuff like that. So overall, I like the teams a lot more. I think KC is a much more exciting roster. I think Koi has gotten a lot better. Like their first game I thought was pretty impressive. They still have that like controlled style, or I guess I shouldn't say control, but they have that aggressive style where they understand like how to make plays as a unit together in the early game. I think that's pretty unique. Giant X looks good. You know, G2, not worried about them at all. You have the Fnatic roster, which is good in their own right. It just feels like there's going to be more good teams in the LEC. And out of all the teams that are playing, the only 2 teams that I'm really not excited about watching are Rogue and Heretics and SK. I guess those 3 teams that I don't really care about that much. I just think that overall the strength of the league will be better. I don't know if that will result in anything else, but I'm down for that to at least be the case. I don't need them to get out of Swiss for me to enjoy watching LEC. Like most of the time I watched LEC, I enjoyed watching LEC, and most of the time I was watching LEC live viewing, they weren't making it, they weren't doing anything, right? Like it's like I was watching LEC on stream in 2019 when they were one of the best, when G2 was one of the best teams in the world. Most of the time when I was watching LEC, it was like not getting out of Swiss, not getting out of groups, whatever. And I'm okay with that as long as the level of play is like somewhat respectable. And it feels like we're pushing towards that. Like I like Kalist. I think Kalist is like fucking beast. Like he comes in, looks poised, like his confidence. You know, Lot looks good. Just a lot of the players that came in, I'm excited to see what they do. I actually like Knock Knocko a lot. I think that the way he plays, like he plays with confidence. And even though he's making mistakes, I like seeing players that go out there and play like that, because since you're playing like yourself, your mistakes are more correctable. You know what you're doing wrong because you see them. You see the mistakes. Whereas a lot of times people don't even play like they play on stage. So you're like, okay, is it a mental thing? Like, why aren't you doing what you normally do? And the result of it is a lot of the time that people have anxiety and they're nervous and stuff like that. So overall, I like the direction that LEC is going in. And it's looking like it will be just a more fun year of LEC in general. We'll have to see when it gets into best of threes, because I think best of threes could be tricky in spring season. If like SK becomes giga unwatchable and Heretics is also bad and Rogue really sucks, that could be like kind of a grueling period, because they have what, like 7, it's like a 7 week best of 3 period. We'll have to see how it goes then. But for the most part, I'm satisfied with it. I think the changes to LEC were positive. Gameplay looks like it'll be generally better too. I like the balance of the teams.
Yeah. Give me your top 3 new additions here, Jamada.
To what, the LEC?
Yeah.
In what editions where though? Like just player. I mean, Jojo, right? I think obvious answer. Very, very good to see Jojo in the league. I'm technically old teammates with one of the Mad coaches, Pad. So I have always got a bit of a keen eye on the Vitality roster, or when he was at Mad with Mac, of course. So I'm going to pile on that train with Naknako. I think when you have a player who just plays like themselves, the kind of mistakes that they make, if they're habitual, are generally, when you're working with that kind of player, infinitely easier to iron out than most issues that you would have to kind of work with. So I'm kind of happy to see Naknako. And then I guess Kalist by default, right? There was so much hype around Kalist by the KC fan base. And I know, Dom, you interact with European fan bases a lot more than maybe dGon does, but dGon, the French fans were hyping this guy up like the second coming of, bro. Like, they have non-stop been talking about Kalist since KC came in last year. A whole part of Targamas still being in the league is because Targamas and Kalist were a fantastic duo in the ERLs, and the team at KC believed that it would be worth keeping Targamas on, despite all of the pressure on the roster, despite all of the pressure that he faced last year and the poor performances that he had last year, to see Targamas and Kalist as a duo. And for the time being, that little hedge is paying off for them. So I think those probably be my 3 picks: Naknako, Kalist, and Jojo.
All right, now time for the reverse Uno card. Who is the worst addition to the league so far. We a little too positive here. Jamada, I'm going to make you go first.
Oh no. God, I hadn't really thought about it.
Someone you saw, or maybe not even addition. Who was player 50 out of 50 after week 1 in the LEC?
I think the obvious answer to the 50 out of 50 is either Isma or 113 maybe. Yeah. I don't think Isma had a good showing this week at all. I think individually he just played terribly, man. And like sometimes you can have weeks like that, but geez, that was a hard watch. That was a really, really hard watch. And I'm very worried for him, not to tangent on this, but for all players for too long. But without a Niski and that kind of direction from another player who he's interacting with super frequently, I don't really know how the trajectory of a player like Isma can be super positive. I don't know too much about how Rika operates as a player, admittedly. So maybe there is some benefit there in the long run. But yeah, Isma's probably 50 out of 50. 113 individually. Look, BDS might be 2-1. But I saw some demonstrable things from Mr. 113, Mr. Mom, throughout the weekend. And then I don't know if I have a third. I mean, I could addition, obviously, because that's the key like latch point here.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but Hylissang might have to earn it for the 9 deaths in 20 minutes game.
Jesus
as much
Christ.
as much as
ran it.
He ran it, man. He absolutely ran it.
he was doing an experiment for all of LoL esports to see if Ruinous Otacon would spawn, and it did not.
Like I love Hilly as much as the next guy, and as much as the old head, as much as the next old head. Right? I've been a Hilly fan since he was on UOL in like 2015. I've loved Hilly for forever. He might have to hold the 48th place in this week's positioning.
Hold the 48. That's
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. I got
we
one.
got it. We got a good comment real quick. We got a good comment. I like it. I want to call this segment "That Boy Is Ass." That's just such a good. That's just such a good comment. I just love that shit. All right, go ahead. Who are you slotting in this week's edition of "That Boy Is Ass"?
Reeker was some ass this week. Like Reeker, like there's a reason he has that name, because that fucking gameplay fucking reeks, bro. He is a Reeker on the Rift. Like I thought something else was happening. I was hyped because he was really good in that BDS Academy team. I'm not gonna pretend like I watched that many matches. I watched EUM finals. That team was apparently running over people. People told me, "Oh shit, this team, this BDS Academy team, they would be the 5th best team in LEC if they were in LEC." That's the one with Skewmon, Genax, Reeker, etc. And my God, what I got from somebody who's supposed to be a beast last year, one of the best players in ERLs, maybe one of the best mid laners in all of ERLs, and rank 1 in on the EUS ladder. I thought something else was coming, bro. Those Galio games they really did. I mean, it's partly Isma's fault, it's partly his fault, but you can't be playing Galio Zin and be like 0-9. Like, if you're gonna play Galio Zin, at least like get some shit done early and then get outscaled and lose the game. Don't just fucking rock up and just 0-9 it, just lose every single fucking skirmish with Galio Zin, please. Like that was so fucking hard to watch. So for me, Reeker was pretty fucking ass this week. I can't imagine him having a much worse debut.
All right, well, there you have it. The chat, the commenter that gave me the quote, he threw in a former bro academy bro talent, Loopy, who
yeah, he's ass. He's not good.
His time over on Isuris Gaming last year. That was not a good start. But thank you for the segment, Loopy. I really appreciate it. Best of luck in your next games. Okay, well, there it is. If you've got hope for the LEC, let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, that is our Galaxy Brain Club discussion here, and closes out this week's episode of Power Spike. Did we get everything that you wanted? We touched on T1. We talked about the big teams. We didn't give a lot of love to. I'm gonna give one more thing I want you guys to talk about. Berserker getting player of the match in his first game in the LCK. That felt like I felt proud, Dom. I don't know if you have that kind of affinity or that attachment, but it just felt cool to see the guy. Yes, I know he's Korean, but he never got to play in tier 2 or tier 1, maybe tier 2, but definitely not in the LCK. Grow in North America, be a quote unquote North American product, and then come out and show up in his very first game here. It was just a cool thing to see. Did you get to watch that, and did it make you think a certain type of way?
No, I didn't.
Okay. All right. Well, there you
unlucky.
go. All right. Shout out to Berserker. I tried.
Yeah, but I will say I didn't see like any of the other stuff. I kind of like watched this game like second monitor and stuff like that. I will say I talked to him recently. He might be the first LCK guest ever on Sackdown. So that'll be cool if we can get it done.
That would be super cool. He's got time. He's making TikToks for the DN social.
Yeah, I already got into contact with him. He said he's down to do it. We're trying to schedule a time, so we'll see.
Super bug. If you want that to happen, tell Berserker. Go to his Twitter or whatever. All right, y'all. That does it here for us. Where are people catching you this week, Jamada? Same shit.
Yeah, NLC. I'm on the day that Dom's team is playing, so I get to cast Dom's team. Hopefully, not run it down again in game 1 for a leader. And I quote from the Ruddy Sack Twitter, calling Hums a mentally impaired goat farmer.
A mentally impaired goat farmer.
Yeah,
and I was thinking like, I don't think Hums has it in him to farm goats. Like I just don't think he would be able to be a goat farmer. So
no, I don't think you can put him around animals in general. There's no way he can take care of animals. He
can't take care of himself.
Take care of himself. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So animals, different thing. You know, it's a whole level of responsibility. Yeah, and if he gets Draven again, hopefully he actually plays the game. You know, that was a tragic showing despite the result. Otherwise, enough shitting on Hamza. Yeah, the NLC broadcast Wednesday and Thursday. Won't be there Wednesday, but I will be covering Dom's team on Thursday. So tune in there.
Do you give him permission to go in? Are you gonna be like an angry owner and message the broadcast saying that they're biased or whatever?
Yes.
All right. Sorry, Jamada. I tried. Dom, what do you got this week?
Same thing. Got an announcement coming out on Wednesday. Yeah, there's some bangers coming. I like the matches that I'm most excited for. We have a AL versus Top Esports on Friday, so I think that's a giga banger. I mean, that's a insane one coming up. And then also I'll be starting the LTA South and North co-streams this weekend and doing Ruddy Sack on Thursday. So yeah, we got a full week. And dGon's DC'd. Nice.
GG. What do we do now, Dom?
I guess that's the end of the show. All right, peace. Later, guys.